Okay, good morning, everyone. So just real quick, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me in the back. If you can hear me, all right, right on. So as Kumu Matt mentioned, so this summer I worked at Kakoʻo in the Heʻeia of ahupuaʻa. So my presentation focused on the survival of native Hawaiian plants at an agroforestry restoration site. So why is this the study of my focus? Well, we all know that currently right now, Hawaii is considered as a melting pot of cultures, languages, cuisines, and is not limited to that only, but also extends out to plants and vegetation. The second reason being is that Hawaii itself, the island, has been subjected to intense agroforestry in the past, and due to that, it has caused degradation to the soil and the land in general. So that's the other reason why. And the third reason why is there's pretty limited data on the survival rate of native Hawaiian plants, and especially in the agroforestry system, such as Kawainui, what it's doing now. Like, this is an agroforestry system right now where there's planting different native Hawaiian crops and trying to grow them together in a certain area. And with that being said, this summer I studied, my study site focused in the ahupuaʻa of Heʻeia, specifically in Puʻulani. So Puʻulani is a 164 acres of land where an ongoing study is currently being conducted there. So in Puʻulani is currently being sorry. So Puʻulani is currently being currently working supervised by Kakoʻo, stewarded by Kakoʻo ʻŌiwi. It's a community-based nonprofit organization, very much similar to Kawainui. I mean, Kaukulakalana. And they work to restore native and culturally managed agroforestry. And they are currently working in collaboration with Manoa right now, which is the area where I was studying. So just a quick brief location of where the area is located. So this is the current Heʻeia right now, and the blue dot here is where the Puʻulani is located, where the site or I conducted my study. So just a quick background. So the area where I did my study, like I said, has been an ongoing study, and it started in 2018 actually, but then it was implemented in 2018 and actually got started in 2019. And so what they did there was the area was at first just covered with dense non-native plants. So they cleared out the area and they set up 10 plots, each 12 by 15 plots, and they planted all native plants. So they basically mixed up all different kind of native plants and put them in each plot. And they've been monitoring the survival rate of these plants since 2019. And as we all know, 2020, COVID happened. So not a lot of action or monitoring was done during that time. So there appeared to be a gap of data. That's why I decided to focus on my study, which was to gather data at this present time and look at the survival rate during that missing data. So during my study, I focused on two time periods. The first time period, which was 0 to 1.5 years post-planting, and then the second time period being 1.5 to 3 years post-planting. So moving into the study, I focused on two main questions. The first question is, what is the survival rate of Hawaii's native plants within the first time period when compared to the later time period? And then my second question was, what is the survival rate of each of these plant species' life history in the second time period? So I proposed two hypotheses for each of these questions. And the first hypothesis was that the survival rate of Hawaii's native plants will be higher in the second time period in comparison to the first time period. And then my hypothesis for the second question was the survival rate amongst the selected native plants will vary due to their life history, and that the short-lived open area shrubs will have the lowest chance of the three life history. So here are I chose 9 plant species specifically to work with. So here are the plant species. So here we have the scientific name, and then in the middle we have the Hawaiian names for each of them. And in the farthest left, we have the life history they are categorized under. There's 3 life history. There's the fast-growing early succession, and they are wili, koa, loulu, and the hiolena. And then we have the understory shrub, small tree, alahe'e, pualualo, a'ali'i, maile. And lastly, we have the short-lived open area shrub, which is the aveoveo. And so this is basically my step right here. So what we did was first we measured the DBH, which is the diameter at breast height, or we measured the diameter of the plant. So next, after we did that, we measured the height of the plant, and then we just checked the plot number and the tag number, because each of those individual plants each have a plot number to identify each of the plants, so we know if this plant is dead or if this plant is still alive as such. So we utilized Excel to analyze our data and clean all of the raw ones, and we came up with 3 figures. The first figure is the survival. We came up with the survival rate by time period. So as you can see, there's 2 bars for each of the plants. The yellow bar being the time period 1, and then the blue bar being the time period 2. So as you can see, we found that for the wili, the first time period, it had a higher chance in the first time period when compared to the second period. And in the same manner, koa, iolana, and maile all had a higher survival chance in the survival rate in the first period. And then for pualualo, alahe, aveoveo, loulu, and a'ali'i, we found that they had a higher survival rate in the second time period. So what I found was basically 5 out of the 9 plants had a higher survival rate in the second time period, while 4 out of 9 had a higher survival in the first time period. So in the next figure that we made is basically the survival rate of each of the plant species over time. So as I mentioned earlier, they did measurements at each period times. And then as you can see, it reached 1.5. It was a year and a half after post-planting. They stopped, right? As you can see the dots here. So 1.5 years to 3 years, there's a gap of data. And the 3rd year is when I did the measurement. Right, so you can see here, they each have their own unique unique survival rate. Some of them immediately drop and then later stabilize throughout the second time period. Some of them manage to have a good row. And yes, so these are basically them. And then the last figure we came up with was the survival rate by life history. And then if you remember each of the plants and the life history they're categorized under, you can see here on the left, they're put in the circular color coded. So for the green one, it's the understory tree shrub, the alahe, pualula, a'ali'i, and the maile. And then for the blue, we found wili, koa, loulu, iolana under early succession tree. And then the short-lived shrub is the aveoveo. And then we found out that understory tree shrub had a higher survival rate in the second time period when compared to early succession tree and short-lived shrub. But we also have to take into consideration the standard deviation. It had a really high standard deviation for the understory tree shrub. So there's a high variability within there. And then the early succession tree, we can see that it's not as high as the understory tree shrub, but there's a small variability in there. And then for the short-lived shrub, we only had 1 plant, so we should also take that into consideration. That's why it could have been the lowest, or it could have been higher if there were 3 other plants in there. So yeah, so that's basically it. So why is this study important? So I believe that with the study I conducted, we found out a lot of information that did not exist earlier, especially in this agroforestry site. So I believe that we found out that native plants did relatively well in agroforestry context, which Kauluakalana could use and apply in this area where they're doing very much the similar thing. And then we found that caring for plants within established phase may assist the plant survival within the second time period. So that's just another information that other organizations such as Kauluakalana and Kakoʻo could use in restoring culturally important plants. And then next is that early succession plants are good for the establishment phase. As we all noticed that the early succession plants, they have the higher survival rate, and that they have a higher chance of survival when they are planted in the establishment phase, when they're already like grown, so they have a higher survival. So next is, like I said, it could assist in restoration in all of Hawaii, and even throughout the Pacific. It could be useful information with all the data that's been gathered. And next is support the restoration of native biodiversity in each specific area, such be Hawaii or like Palau or Pohnpei or any other islands. And then next is strengthen Hawaiian cultural identity. As we all know, Hawaiians connect with the land, they identify with the land, they come from the land. So plants are also very much similar. They come from the land, so Hawaiians believe Hawaiians come from the land. And thus, it being important. Okay, and that concludes my presentation. I am so sorry if you cannot hear me. Yeah, yeah, sorry. Thank you.